we've spent a lot of time today on things that were away from what I wanted to talk about. So let's actually dive into some of the big sports stories from over the weekend. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins last night agreed to contract extensions with the Cincinnati Bengals. This is kind of like a looming cloud over the Bengals' future, and they got it done. Listen to these figures. Jamar, 4 years, $161 million with $112 million guaranteed. That makes him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, which I feel like I've said 7 times over the past week. And then T. Higgins gets 4 years, $115 million with the first 2 years guaranteed, making him the highest paid wide receiver number 2 in NFL history. So Burrow gets his toys back. Higgins and Jamar, the 2 highest paid receiver duos in the history of the NFL.
Well, I know they were really worried about T. Higgins leaving this offseason. There were a lot of teams that I had covered throughout last season. I would talk with their radio crews, and they were like, oh, yeah, T would be a great addition here. T would be a great addition there. And so for Cincinnati to be able to lock up both of them, that's massive for Joe Burrow. But as we know, with the Bengals last year, we saw how awesome that offense is and how great Joe Burrow played at an MVP level last season. And they missed the postseason because their defense was not good. And that's putting it lightly. So I wonder now if now that they've got huge money, mega money tied up in their quarterback and their top 2 receivers, you know they're going to produce. But kind of what we saw last year with them, what we've seen with the Dolphins, when you have that much money concentrated in those 3 areas, how it affects everything else. If they can draft well and they can find guys on the cheap to kind of piece that defense together to be okay, they'll be fine. But after watching what happened last year, it's such a tough spot for them because you don't not keep Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. You don't not pay Joe Burrow. But now you're left with all the holes on the opposite side of the ball. And I'm really interested to see if it gets any better from last year to this year, because that was their big Achilles heel and why they missed the playoffs, because they gave up 1 billion points last year.
I was going to say, as soon as it happened, as soon as I saw the deals, I thought about the Dolphins. Pay your quarterback, Burrow, Tua. Pay Tyreek, Jamar Chase. Pay Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins. You're paying $90 million a year plus in 3 guys. Now you have to sacrifice. I think the Bengals have sacrificed on the defensive side. The Dolphins sacrificed on the offensive line side. Mm-hmm. And now you see, like, Teron Armstead took the deal, like they're trying to find money. But no, Josh, your evaluation is dead on with what I was thinking. Where does the sacrifice come when you keep 3 I'll say Pro Bowl. I won't say Hall of Famers. I think Jamar Chase is a Hall of Famer.
I agree.
But Burrow's on the edge. I don't know if T. Higgins is a Hall of Famer, but you keep 3 all-pro players. What are you sacrificing with those contracts? And they're on the defensive side. The Dolphins are on the offensive line side and the trenches side. So we'll see how they figure that out. But you just can't. I'm not a fan of paying 2 receivers $30 million a year. That's tough.
You have an elite quarterback and you have an elite number 1. As awesome as T. Higgins is of a fit there, Yoshivash came on strong there as a guy in the slot for them. You can find solid receivers for cheaper. And now they're in a situation where, all right, Trey Hendrickson, who had an incredible season last year on the defense, can they extend him? Can they keep him? They lost Sam Hubbard, who I believe he retired after he got hurt last year. So they're losing a lot on a defense that was already pretty bad outside of Trey Hendrickson. And when you look around the AFC and what they're going to have to compete with, it's Josh Allen, it's Lamar Jackson, it's, of course, Patrick Mahomes at Kansas City. What's Pittsburgh's situation going to look like at their quarterback spot? We know they're going to be solid around. So, listen, again, it's a tough spot because you want to keep those elite players, but how does that affect everything else? And is that going to work? I think as great as look, they're past the point now of considering it. They did it. They kept the 2 receivers along with Burrow in the big contract. Are they going to regret that T. Higgins money? T. Higgins could have 1,500 yards next year. Both those guys could have 1,500 yards next year and catch close to double-digit touchdowns. And Burrow could throw for 4,500 yards, and they could finish 10-7 or 9-8 because they can't stop anybody. Yeah. And so really, is that money worth it? right? Were those contracts worth it? I think no doubt about it, Burrow and Chase got to do it, have to. But T. Higgins, as great as he is, and as much as you want to keep that together at the expense of everything else, I don't know.
I think right now that NFL GMs are trying to figure out where the salary cap is going and how they can do, and they're trying to push money forward and what's it called, kick the can down the road on this stuff. But I just don't. You can't pay 2 receivers this much and have a successful roster. I hope somebody proves me wrong. The Eagles, how the Eagles did with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and they kept Jalen Hurt. Like, I think they kind of, you look at those numbers and they're kind of figuring out, but those guys are going to come up and also have a great defense. They had to get rid of Darius Slay. Darius Slay is now in Pittsburgh because they couldn't pay all these DBs.
Yeah, but you got the exciting whites there, so it makes Darius a little expendable. Quinyon Mitchell really good too.
But both on rookie deals.
Yep, exactly.
Both the white boys on rookie deals now. Like you have to really draft and really piece this together. And that's the part of both the situation we're talking about with the Bengals and the Dolphins. Are you going to be able to piece it together? Chris Greer has 11 or 10 picks that the NFL stole the pick back from him. I found that out from Chris Perkins last week. 10 picks. A couple of those dudes need to be starters.
Yeah.
Cheap starters. And that's what the Philadelphia has done. They found cheap starters.
I would typically agree with you, Crowder, in terms of structuring your roster and balancing the cap. Can't pay 2 wide receivers that much money, as evidenced by the Dolphins. I think this is a different situation, though. I think you have Joe Burrow, who might be a top 5 quarterback when he's healthy, or is a top 5 quarterback when he's healthy. You have maybe the best pass catcher in the NFL in Jamar Chase, and you have T. Higgins, who would be a number 1 on 26 other teams. I just think you have something so special there that you just ride it. Because you know that when those 3 guys are healthy, you're probably a top 5 offense in the NFL. And it's hard to go away from that. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I just think when it's this special with those 2 specifically, you don't go away from that.
But Solana, to that point, but now you have 2 sides of the ball. Like NBA is different. You get 3 dogs, you're set. You have your 1A, 1B, 2A. In the NFL, to Josh's point, they can score points. If Burrow's healthy, they're going to score points.
They averaged 28 a game last year, and they finished.
But
9-8.
they're not going to stop a nosebleed with a napkin. And now Trey Hendrickson, who's one of the best doggish defensive end, pass rushing, run stopping, he does it all in the NFL. You might have trouble keeping him. So that's why you have to put together 30 good players in the NFL. You don't got to put together 4 good players like we did with the Heat and Big 3 and Boston and all that. You can't have a Big 3 in the NFL.
Or you put together 3 really good players on the offensive side of the ball, and then on the defensive side of the ball, just try to put together good to average players and try to hit on the draft and just try to win within the margins on that end because of how good the offensive side of the game is, which is essentially what the Dolphins tried to do with Marino, right? For years. They tried to do that with Marino, and it didn't work, but they did get to a Super Bowl, and you had Dan Marino for a long time.
That's why I bring up Philly, though, quickly. That's why I bring up Philly, because they hit on their draft picks. They paid the offensive guys. They hit on their draft picks. They brought in Saquon, but they had to have those young guys, those guys on puppy deals, to be able to end up on both sides of the ball having some very successful players. That's what they did. That's what they're going to have to do in Cincinnati, and that's what we'll have to do in Miami.
I'm not sure if this is even a good hypothetical, but because we're talking about the 2 trios there, and now that they've all gotten paid, you flip-flop the quarterbacks. Which trio would you rather have? Tua with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, or Joe Burrow with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle?
Tyreek and T.
Well, that wasn't.
Do I get to mix and match them?
No. The options were Tua with the Bengals receivers or Burrow with Waddle and Hill.
Man, I'd actually take Jamar because he's younger.
That's a good hypothetical.
That's a great question. That's why I mixed them. I'd actually take the Cincinnati receivers because Jamar's younger,
So hold on.
And
But
they're
you're taking
different
Tua
people.
as their quarterback
Bro,
over Joe Burrow.
Quickly, we interviewed T. Higgins on the pivot. T. Higgins is bigger than me. T. Higgins 6'4", 230, yoked up. T. Higgins is a very big man.
I'm 6'4", 230 also.
You look different than T. Higgins. But even that, Jamar's about 6'1". I just the height, the age. I would take the Cincinnati overall duo.
But he's saying you get one of the two wide receiver duos. So either Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but with Joe Burrow, or you get the Cincy duo with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but Tua Tagovailoa as the quarterback. Which one are you taking? So swap the quarterbacks. Which team are you taking?
We've had the quarterback conversation. I'm taking Burrow over Tua, and I'm taking the Cincinnati receivers over the Dolphins.
No. But Crowder, I'm saying,
man, you can't give me a buffet and tell me I can't eat chicken.
But it's two choices.
It's two choices. You can't. You keep flip flopping. I know which duo is better. It's the Bengals receiving duo.
Yes, so I'm taking that duo.
Okay, but I know, and I also know which quarterback is better. Burrow over Tua.
So I'm taking ribs. I'm gonna take ribs, and I also want broccoli.
Hold on, but put everything down.
You have to take Tua.
Put everything down. Put the ribs down. Put the salad down, and put the egg rolls down for a second. If I told you that you had to pick Tua with the Bengals receivers, that's option A. Tua with the Bengals receivers, or option B, Burrow with the Dolphins duo with the Dolphins receivers. Which one are you picking? I'm glad we got there. We got there.
I don't think I presented it in that confusing way.
I'm taking Tua with Jamar and T.
I was hoping you would say I'm going to take Burrow with Tyreek and T.
You want me to? Can I have my full buffet back, Josh?
I mean, the answer to the full buffet is the Bengals trio. I mean,
yeah.
I would take Burrow with Tyreek and Jamar.
Yeah, but don't stop there. Then give me DK Metcalf. give me all the best players. Yeah.
Now Saquon's my running back. Y'all want me to put together my all-star team?
It is an interesting question though that Appel's posing, because how much of what Tua got out of Tyreek and Waddle last year, so not this year, but last year, where the Dolphins were the best offense, could they replicate it with Joe Burrow? Would they have looked better last year, aside from Tua missing time, with Burrow as their quarterback? And can Tua put up the same numbers in a different style of offense with two of the best receivers in the NFL? Like, it's an interesting question.
It is. I do believe, and it's funny because we're not talking about, Marcus Mariota. Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa.
Yes.
So I'm going to take Joe Burrow over Tua all day. But now y'all want to put me in this corner where I got to pick either one. I think Jamar
That's how
Chase.
hypotheticals work.
The hypothetical, yeah. I think Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are a better duo, a bigger duo, just as fast, can kill one-on-ones better than Tyreek and Waddle can. And Waddle really didn't have a great year. No. Neither of them had a great year, to be honest. I think you cannot stop Jamar Chase from getting 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. He's just that good.
So you're saying you're taking Burrow with Higgins and Chase?
Y'all want to put all these restrictions on my answers. I want the Cincinnati offense with the Philadelphia offensive line and the Philadelphia running back. I want George Kittle at tight end. Y'all want me to make my all-star team? I will.
Go by Pro Bowl rules, though, so you got to go the 5th and 6th options on this team, too.
No, my backup is Josh Allen. Let's get into it.
And, of course, your head coach would be Mike McDaniel. Absolutely.
I'm taking Andy Reid. I'm sorry.
Do we have any other headlines here?
The Heat play the Knicks tonight. Andrew Wiggins is questionable. Cats are off until Thursday. Tough weekend for them. Inter Miami won yesterday, 2-1. Leo Messi not called for the international break for Argentina. He does have a muscle injury, so he will stay behind. But Inter Miami undefeated and have won, I believe the number is 6 straight since their opening day, 6 straight games. And shout out to Fafa Pico, who scored the late winner in the 88th minute yesterday. Bro, that guy is a Kendall legend. So shout out to him.
This Brad Guzan was stopping everything coming his way, leaping left and right, shots coming in at 1 billion miles an hour. He's got a layout, and he's 73 years old. And then this Fafa puts barely any mustard on this header, and it somehow gets by Guzan. After all the ones Guzan had stopped, but prior to that.
I love Fafa Pico.
Would you put him with Joe Burrow? Would you take him with Joe Burrow?
I'd probably take Pico de Gallo.
Ooh, fire. Your weather from the Demesman and Dover Law Firm. Call them 866-954-MORE, youraccidentattorneys.com. Free consultations 24/7. Partly cloudy in South Florida. Tonight, the lows will drop into the 70s. A little breezy today as well. Gentlemen, that is your weather.
All right, so we'll have more here on Hawk and Crowder after the break here in the 4 o'clock hour.